welcome back to BDB and to my realistic makeup collection. Now, this is a video that's been going around YouTube for years at this point. And I mean, obviously everyone's collection is realistic to themselves. Honestly, while I think that my makeup collection would be large for someone who didn't particularly enjoy makeup or didn't enjoy switching it up day to day, I don't think it's that ridiculous for someone who does wear makeup every day and does play around with different looks. So the approach that I've decided to take to this is, what would my makeup collection look like if I still had my same interests? I still liked makeup, I still liked playing with color. I just never found and fell into the YouTube beauty rabbit hole. I think it makes sense to start with a little bit of background information. I started wearing makeup when I was a freshman in college, or at least wearing more than maybe one piece of makeup on my face. Certainly when I was in high school, I did own a foundation. I didn't wear it very often because A, it didn't match me very well, and even I knew at that point that it didn't match me very well, so it must have really not matched me very well. And my oily skin also just ate it up. So by noon, I was looking pretty bad. I also had quite a few lip glosses. I think they were from NYC and Lip Smackers. So that's the era we're talking about. And when I first got my real makeup, when I was a freshman in college, my mom bought it for me, and it was a Covergirl quad, a couple of Covergirl quads actually. I want to say it was a gray or a purple eyeliner and a Covergirl blush. That was the makeup I had. My mom doesn't wear makeup, so there was no kind of built-in brand loyalty. We just bought Covergirl stuff, probably because she had a coupon, and that's how we all got started. So for base products, I imagine that I would be keeping things very, very simple. I suspect I probably wouldn't have a primer because I don't think I would see the point, but if I did have one, it would probably be the e.l.f. Anti-Acne Primer. I'm cheap, that's true across the board. And also, though I really don't have a problem with acne now, knock on wood, when I was in high school, I had really, really bad acne. And I had a little bit through most of college, but really until about the last year, I still catered my entire skincare routine, whatever little skincare I did, towards anti-acne, because I really thought that it was like going to come back all of a sudden. Hopefully it's not going to happen. That would be bad, but I think that that would lead me to get an anti-acne primer if I got anything. As far as foundation goes, I'm suspecting that I would be more in the BB cream tinted moisturizer category. First of all, because my skin is relatively clear, I don't feel a need to wear foundation very often at all. And additionally, I got burned a few times by getting foundation that smelled like paint, Wet n Wild, Looking at You, or that oxidized really bad on me, Covergirl, that's a call out on your part, or was just a bad texture and oxidized, so that would be Rimmel. And so I think that I would just steer clear and go for something really lightly tinted. The one that I wrote down is the e.l.f. Camo CC because that seems to be pretty widely available. I don't think I would be shopping at Ulta or on brand websites. It would probably just be Walmart, Target, and Walgreens, because that is where I shopped for makeup before I found beauty YouTube. I am pretty certain that there would be powder because quite soon after I bought that first little set of real grown-up makeup, I started buying the NYC pressed powder, and I went through like 2 of them a year the entire time that I was in college. So I think that today I would probably have the Maybelline Fit Me pressed powder. I would have had to move on from NYC, not because I would have wanted to, but just because I think they're out of business entirely. If they're not, they're at least not readily available in the same way that they once were. As far as bronzer goes, if I still had a bronzer, because again, bronzer was one of those things that I got burned by quite early on and then backed off of, I bet that I would still have my NYC Sunny. I bought that in probably 2013 or 2014, and I had it for like 5 years because I never used it because it turned me very orange. But I thought that all bronzers did that. So I probably would have just kept it around, used it every once in a while, and then said, no, bronzer's not for me. I am too cool toned. I think I would have had that understanding and just kept using it every once in a while. And then setting spray, I think I would actually have, not because I knew what setting spray was for, but just because it's really pleasant to put on. And I think that I would have been brought in by the Wet n Wild coconut setting spray. I'm pretty sure I would have owned that because it smells like coconut. And I was living in the South for the past 5 years, and it gets really hot down there. Misting something on your face just feels delightful. So while the base products I think would be pretty minimal, I mean, we have like 1, maybe 2 items in those categories, I think that my color cosmetics collection might actually be larger than it is now. A big part of that is my weird desire to collect every color in something, or at least all of the colors that interest me. So for example, I found that these Simply Vera Wong tops you can get at Kohl's work really well for me. So I have like 5 or 6 in slightly different patterns. And there's probably 2 or 3 other shirts that I have like 4 or 5 of. There's probably a point where I had 15 different Sally Hansen Insta-Dry nail polishes. Just when I find something that works, I will continue to slowly pick up 1 or 2 until I have all of the ones from that line that interest me at all. And I think that I would probably have applied that to makeup as well, because I mean, that is how I tended to shop pre-beauty YouTube. So as far as blushes go, my first blush was a Covergirl Instant Cheekbones, and it was the rose shade. I would have eventually ended up with most, if not all, of that Instant Cheekbones line. I liked that because I found it quite easy to mix the different shades. I found that even on the lighter ones, the deepest shade in the trio was often a little bit difficult for me to use. So I would just mix the first 2 shades. One was intended to be a highlight, but I had no idea what a highlighter was. So I would just mix the lightest blush shade and the medium blush shade, and that would give me a color that I found was workable for my skin tone. And I think I probably would have ended up purchasing quite a few of the Cheekers blushes as well. These are, I think, the same formula as the Instant Cheekbones blushes. These are just the singles, and they're pretty inexpensive. One thing that I thought about when I was going through and making this list was, what would I be able to pick up without really thinking too much about it? The kind of drugstore makeup that I bought pre-beauty YouTube was very much the kind of thing that I could pick up on a whim. I mean, it's pretty easy to go to the grocery store or go to Walmart, swing by the beauty aisle, and pick up a $4 lipstick and not feel too bad about it, not even really think about the money that you spent on it, because, I mean, it's probably one of the cheaper things in your cart even. And I think that is probably how I would have gathered a lot of my collection, is just buying, you know, one lipstick one week, one little $4 eyeshadow quad the next week. And while I don't think I ever would have, you know, just balled out and spent like $80 on drugstore makeup, buying one thing every week, one or two things every couple weeks, that does really add up because you don't really go through color cosmetics that quickly. And one thing, I think the first thing that I actually own now that I think I would have had would have been these Wet n Wild Hummingbird blushes. Now, there's two reasons for this. First of all, because they're from Wet n Wild and these were like $4.50, they would have been at that right price where I think I would have actually purchased them. But also, they're hummingbirds. I stinking love hummingbirds so much. I've largely worn away the embossing on this one. Actually, I think both of them are at pretty similar stages of being worn away. But they both have this really pretty little hummingbird embossing. And I think that if I was into makeup but not into beauty YouTube, I likely would have purchased all three shades. They have a third that's like a deeper pink. And I know realistically would not work for my skin tone. However, I think that it is something that, you know, I would have bought one on a first trip. A second one would have made its way into my cart on another trip, and then I would be thinking about how much I liked these because they are really quite nice. The formula on these is really good. And the third one probably would have come home with me eventually. I've been resisting that urge for about a year and a half now, so I'm doing better than my fictional self. And with the possible exception of maybe then wandering from the Wet n Wild baked blushes to their more standard blushes, you know, like pearlescent pink and rosé champagne, the ones that currently come in the little circular compacts, I think that'd probably be it. I mean, I still feel like there's not that much difference between different blush shades, and I think if I had a good chunk of the Covergirl line and the Wet n Wild line, I would probably feel like all of my bases were covered. With eyes, I was very much a quad girl when I got started. I don't think I owned any eyeshadows that weren't in a quad for probably 3 or 4 years after I started wearing makeup. And I think that would have continued had I not found Beauty YouTube, because the quads, at least the quads that I liked, tend to give you an idea of what look you're going to do. A lot of the old school drugstore quads came with instructions on the back as to how to create a look. It just seemed very approachable to me at that point. And because I, again, am kind of cheap and like to slowly pick up most of entire collections, I think I would have had so many of these e.l.f. bite-sized quads. These are $3, and the quality on these also is quite nice. I mean, I have owned 4 of these at different points. I have 3 of them here to show you. That first one was Rosewater, which is the lighter pink-purple one. Here we have Berry Bad, which is more of a reddish berry. And then finally, Pumpkin Pie, which is a very warm orangey brown set of colors. And I think I would probably own 6 of these. I think there are a couple palettes that I would have skipped. I know that they have one that has like a red, a blue, and a beige. I don't think I would have had any idea what to do with that because I don't have any idea what to do with that right now. I also want to say that they have like a really deep neutral quad. I probably would have skipped that as well. However, I think I would have likely ended up accumulating all of the other ones that they've released. Another big chunk of my collection would probably be the Wet n Wild small palettes. So they recently, within the last year or two, discontinued their quads and moved to 5 pans. I think I would probably own all or almost all of the 4 and 5 pans in their regular range. I think I likely would have just bought 1 or 2, realized that I did enjoy them, and slowly collected the rest. And while I don't think I would have continued to collect Covergirl quads, because I realized pretty early on that most of them weren't actually very good. I think that Covergirl has some trios and quads that are very neutral and quite nice, but most of the colorful shades were pretty lackluster, and I think I would have realized that relatively quickly. However, pre-YouTube, I never decluttered anything, so if there was still product left in that Covergirl quad, I would still probably have it. I'd still probably use it. Also would probably have like a rainbow of twist-up liners. Well, not a rainbow, the set of colors that you can get at the drugstore. So I'd have probably a couple different purples, a green, a blue, black, silver, gold, bronze, gray, and brown. I feel like those are the colors that you see at the drugstore time and time again. I eventually would have collected them all because, I mean, I was close to having all of those shades at one point or another. I had at least 4 or 5 different shades of the Covergirl one, whatever their retractable eyeliner was at that time. I owned like 4 different shades of that, and I really liked them. I didn't wear them in a way that I think is particularly flattering. I wore them under my lower lash line, which questionable, because I also didn't put them on my upper lash line, but you know what? I liked the way I looked. It made me feel pretty, it made me feel confident, and that is all that matters. So I'm glad that it worked out for me. And while this isn't a color cosmetic product, I just stuck all my eye stuff together. I think I would still be using the Covergirl Professional 3-in-1 mascara. That is, I think, if not the first mascara I ever purchased, then the second mascara I ever purchased. I cannot remember if the first one I bought was the one in the blue tube or the one in the purple tube. They're both from Covergirl. They're both pretty good. I used to buy the brown-black one pretty regularly, and it's a nice mascara. I mean, I've used it as recently as earlier this year, and it's still nice. I don't think it's quite my favorite anymore, but, you know, if I needed to go to the drugstore and buy mascara, if I was, you know, on vacation, realized I didn't have one, and wanted to look nice in pictures, it's probably the one I would pick up. And then lip products. Lip products, I'm certain, is where I would have gone absolutely nuts. And I think that I would have quite the stash built up by this point, but I think that it would be just a couple of brands and probably just a couple of lines within the different brands. So the products that I think I would own quite a few of, first of all, would be the Maybelline Creamy Matte Lipsticks. I did own probably 4 or 5 of those at one point. They are a pretty reasonably priced drugstore lipstick, and they came in a nice variety of colors that were easily available. The Maybelline Creamy Mattes, you could usually get quite a few different colors, even at the smaller format stores, and I liked that formula a lot. I've kind of fallen out of love with it in the past year or so, just because I've been preferring something that's a little bit more sheer and a little more shiny, and that's just not what the Creamy Mattes are intended to be. But I think I would have owned many of those, along with the Revlon Super Lustrous lipsticks, and I think, in particular, I am almost certain that I would own this shade. This is Pink in the Afternoon. I think I might have bought this for the first time just before I started watching beauty YouTube. This one, and this whole line really, I found when I watched Breakfast at Tiffany, and I wanted to match the lipstick shade that she applies in the car, that Audrey Hepburn / Holly Golightly applies in the car. So I looked it up on Google, and Google told me that this was the shade. This is Pink in the Afternoon, if I didn't say it earlier. It told me that this is a close color match. I don't think it's that close, but it is really pretty. I really like the formula. And like I mentioned earlier, I have a tendency to, when I like something, want to buy every color that even vaguely interests me. And I haven't really gotten over that completely. So I think I'm actually doing pretty well at only having 5 of these right now, because every time I'm at Walmart, I find myself meandering through the beauty section and looking at these and just telling myself that I don't need any more. But they are really pretty lipsticks, and you can get them pretty inexpensively. I think they're $5 regular price at like Walmart and Target. So if you have a $2 Revlon coupon, you know, you can do some damage. And then as far as other lip products, before we get too deep into talking about the Revlon Super Lustrous, I think I would own so many of the NYX Butter Glosses, because again, they're inexpensive, they come in a wide variety of colors, and I like the formula on them. So this is actually not one of their butter glosses. It's in similar packaging though. This is their lip conditioner. It's a lip oil, but the butter glosses are in the same packaging, and I think I would probably own at least 5 or 6 of those. Probably most of the lighter shades in that line would end up coming home with me. Additionally, a lipstick formula that I had so many of at one point were the Rimmel Kate Moss lipsticks. I don't think these are actually particularly good lipsticks. I've heard that the matte ones, which came in a red bullet, were actually quite nice. I only ever bought the satin formula ones, which came in a black bullet. And like I said, I don't think that the formula was actually very nice on these, but I liked the colors that they came in. And these smelled so good. I don't know what they smelled like, but I'm sure if you put one under my nose right now, I could tell you that it was a Rimmel Kate Moss lipstick. They smelled delicious. And I think that's about what I would have. You might have noticed there was no highlighter mentioned. There wouldn't be highlighter. I didn't know how to use highlighter, and I still thought of myself as super, super oily when I got into makeup, even though by that point I really wasn't. So I don't think I ever would have gotten into highlighter. Contour, absolutely not. Brow products, I didn't fill in my brows even after I learned about beauty YouTube for like 3 years, so there wouldn't be any brow products. Let's be real. So there is what I think my beauty stash would look like if I had never gotten into beauty YouTube. I would be very interested to hear what yours would be like, and if your stash kind of ended up looking like mine. I think that a lot of us would fall into similar buying patterns, but I'm really not sure. You really don't get a lot of chances to peek into the collections of people who are into makeup but not on beauty YouTube. I'd be very interested to hear about this. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing if you did. I really hope I will see each and every one of you in my next video. Bye!